The hall was filled with soft music, the clinking of glasses, and laughter. Maya Okafor stood at the front of the stage, dressed in an elegant gown, her smile bright for the cameras. It was the night of her family's big charity gala, the one that showed the city how powerful and generous the Okafors were. She loved these nights because the world saw her family as perfect, untouchable. She lifted her glass, ready to give the toast she had practiced in front of the mirror. The crowd was silent, waiting. Maya spoke with charm, with confidence, her words smooth as silk. Every sentence earned a polite clap, a nod of approval. This was her world. She knew how to hold it in her hand. But then the host's voice cut through the applause. Maya, what about the man who keeps accusing your family's company of fraud? He says the Okafors built their empire on lies. The crowd murmured, shifting in their seats. Maya's smile froze for a moment. She could feel all eyes on her, waiting to see how she would respond. And then she laughed. A quick, sharp laugh that filled the hall. She shook her head and said into the microphone, "That man? Please, he's just bitter. Some people fail in life and blame everyone else. Honestly, it's sad." The audience roared with laughter, clapping as if she had told the best joke of the night. The cameras caught every second. In that moment, Maya looked untouchable. But while she stood in the spotlight, one man in the back of the room stayed quiet. His name was Daniel Reed. He didn't laugh. He didn't clap. He just watched her, his face calm, almost too calm. The corners of his mouth tightened, not in anger, but in something deeper, heavier. Then he turned and walked out of the hall without a word. Maya noticed him, though she pretended not to. Something about the look in his eyes unsettled her. For a second, the sound of the crowd cheering faded, and she felt a strange chill. But she quickly pushed it away. Tonight was about celebration, not shadows. The clip of her laugh and her words spread fast on social media. By the next morning, millions had seen it. Some praised her for being bold, for shutting down a troublemaker. Others said she was cruel, mocking a man she barely knew. But Maya told herself it didn't matter. Her family's name was still shining, and she had done her job. Yet alone in her room that night, replaying the moment in her mind, she felt something she hadn't expected. Not pride, not victory, but a small sting of guilt. It was as if she knew, deep down, that the man she mocked was not the fool everyone thought he was. And the truth was, she had no idea what storm she had just set in motion. Maya Okafor grew up in a house where winning was the only thing that mattered. Her father, Emeka, built his empire from nothing. He used to tell them stories about sleeping on a shop floor, about eating one meal a day, and about how he promised himself that his children would never suffer like he did. That promise became his obsession. Money, land, buildings, he collected them as proof that he had beaten the world. As the middle child, Maya learned to survive by being sharp. Her older brother, Chaik, was their father's pride. He was serious, controlling, and already running part of the company. Her younger sister, Grace, was delicate, always protected. That left Maya in between, struggling to be seen. She discovered that charm could open doors. She could calm her father's temper with the right words, distract Chaik's questions with a smile, and protect Grace from the family's arguments. On the outside, Maya was polished and confident. She had studied public relations in school and now managed the family's image. She knew which journalists to call, which stories to kill, and how to make scandals disappear. But on the inside, she carried a fear she never admitted. She worried that if she ever failed, everything her father had built could collapse, and she would be blamed for it. Her mother, Ifeoma, noticed the cracks but rarely spoke. She had learned long ago to keep the peace by staying quiet. She watched her children grow into roles they didn't choose, and her silence weighed on Maya more than any lecture. Sometimes, late at night, Maya wanted to ask her mother if she was proud of her, but the words always stayed locked in her throat. Daniel Reed was not a stranger to this family, though Maya pretended he was. Years ago, he had worked for one of their projects. He was quiet, too precise for his own good, always asking about numbers, contracts, and missing payments. He didn't fit in a company where silence and loyalty were valued more than questions. One day, without warning, he was gone. The official story was that he quit, but rumors whispered that he had been pushed out for knowing too much. Now, 3 years later, he had come back with accusations. He said the Okafors had stolen from the government, had cheated workers, had moved money through fake companies. Chaik called him a liar. Emeka called him ungrateful. Maya told herself he was just bitter. But when she remembered his calm face at the gala, she felt a twist in her stomach that she could not explain. For Maya, the stakes were clear. Her family's empire was more than wealth. It was identity, reputation, and survival. If Daniel's claims gained power, she could lose not only her career but the only place she had ever belonged. Still, in the quiet moments she feared something worse, that his story might be true. 2 days after the gala, the Okafor house was quiet when a knock came at the gate. A courier handed the guard a thick brown envelope, stamped with an official seal. It was not an invitation or a contract. It was a summons. Maya opened it at the dining table, her hands trembling before she even read the words. Inside were court papers. Daniel Reed had filed a case against the family, accusing them of fraud, theft, and corruption. Attached were documents, lists of payments, contracts with missing signatures, and names of shell companies. The evidence looked detailed, too detailed to dismiss as lies. Her father, Emeka, read in silence, his jaw tight. Then he pushed the papers away as if they were dirty. Nonsense, he said. We will crush this. No one believes a man like him over us. Chaik leaned over the table, his face red. This is an attack. He is trying to destroy us. We can't let this spread. Maya, you know what to do. You handle the press. You kill this story before it grows. Maya nodded, though her chest felt heavy. She had silenced scandals before, but this felt different. The papers were not rumors or screenshots. They looked official. Every page carried weight. That evening she met the family's lawyer. His advice was clear: deny everything, stall the court, and control the public story. If you give them even an inch, he said, the investigators will bury you. But later, when Maya was alone, she flipped through the documents again. Daniel had listed dates, times, amounts. He had attached copies of bank transfers and signed approvals. She noticed her brother's initials on some of the forms. She noticed gaps that made sense only if someone inside had created them. Her phone buzzed. A news alert: whistleblower accuses Okafor Group of massive fraud. The story was already out. Clips of her laugh at the gala were replaying side by side with Daniel's petition. Commentators asked, did Maya know? Is this why she mocked him? For the first time in years, she felt her control slipping. The comments online were not just cruel, they cut deep. Some called her a liar, others said she was heartless, a woman laughing while her family stole from the poor. She closed the laptop, her pulse racing. She thought of Daniel's calm face, how he had walked out of the gala without a word. He had been planning this, waiting for the right moment, and she had given him the perfect stage by mocking him in public. The family gathered again that night. Emeka told them to stay strong. Chaik swore he would fight Daniel until the end. Grace cried quietly, and Ifeoma just folded her hands, eyes lowered. Maya sat still, her mind spinning. She wanted to believe Daniel was lying, but her gut told her something else. If even part of his evidence was real, the empire her father built was standing on cracks. And now, the whole city was watching to see if it would fall. The days that followed were filled with fear and anger inside the Okafor home. Reporters camped outside the gates, waiting for a picture, a word, a reaction. Every news channel carried the story, and each day new details came out. Bank records, emails, and testimonies from people who claimed they had been cheated by the Okafor Group. Maya tried to manage it, but the storm was too big. She called contacts she had once controlled. Some answered politely, but most gave her cold responses. A few told her they could not help. This story is too hot, Maya, one journalist whispered before hanging up. For the first time, her charm was useless. She felt as if the ground beneath her was shaking, and there was nothing she could hold on to. Inside the family, the tension grew like fire. Emeka refused to admit weakness. He said, as long as we stand united, no one can touch us. But Chaik was furious and restless. He shouted at staff, blamed the lawyers for being slow, and accused Maya of failing in her role. You were supposed to control the media, he said one night, his voice sharp. Now look, our name is dirt because you laughed at the wrong man. Grace broke down in tears at the dinner table. She was too young to understand all the details, but she felt the weight of it. She whispered that maybe Daniel was telling the truth. Emeka slammed his hand on the table, making the plates jump. Never say that again, he barked. This family does not betray itself. Grace went silent, but Maya saw the fear in her eyes. At night, Maya studied the documents again. She wanted to find holes, mistakes, anything that would prove Daniel had lied. But the more she read, the less certain she became. Some of the signatures looked too familiar. Some of the numbers lined up too perfectly. She began to suspect that Chaik had done things behind their backs, things their father ignored because the money was too good to question. One evening she tried to talk to her mother. She found Ifeoma sitting in the living room, quietly knitting. Mama, Maya said softly, what if Daniel is not lying? Ifeoma's hand stopped moving. She looked at her daughter with tired eyes and whispered, "Truth always finds a way, Maya. But in this family, speaking it can cost you everything." The words stayed with her. A few days later, Maya saw an article online with private emails between her and Chaik. In them, she had made jokes about Daniel years ago, calling him too serious and obsessed with numbers. The emails were now being shared everywhere, painted as proof that she mocked him because she knew he was right. She confronted Chaik immediately. "You leaked those, didn't you?" she said, her voice shaking. Chaik didn't deny it. He leaned back, smug. "Better you take some of the heat than me. You're the one who laughed at him. You're the one the world blames." Maya felt a sting in her chest, like a knife twisting. Her own brother had thrown her to the wolves. In that moment, she realized the family bond she had trusted was nothing more than an agreement to stay silent. Once threatened, even her brother would sacrifice her to protect himself. Her job soon followed. The PR firm she partnered with sent her an email cutting ties. They said they couldn't risk their clients' trust by being connected to her. She stared at the screen, numb. The career she had worked for, the one thing she thought she owned outside her father's empire, was gone in an instant. When she went to a friend for comfort, the friend's tone was cold. "Maya, people lost their homes because of your family's company. Do you know that? Do you know what your laughter looked like to them?" Maya had no answer. She walked away in silence, realizing she had no allies left. Meanwhile, Daniel's case grew stronger. He appeared on television for the first time. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't insult anyone. He simply laid out the facts. He spoke about workers who were unpaid, contracts that vanished, and land stolen from families. He even named people who had suffered. Maya watched the interview late at night, tears filling her eyes as she saw the faces of ordinary men and women behind his words. For the first time, she felt the shame of what her family had done. Chaik's anger turned dangerous. He ordered a group of men to break into Daniel's old apartment, hoping to find something to discredit him. The attempt failed, but rumors of threats began to spread. Daniel filed a police report, and journalists whispered about the Okafor's desperation. Maya confronted Chaik again, but he shouted her down. "Don't you dare lecture me. If he wins, we all lose. If I must fight dirty, I will." Maya stood in her room that night, staring at an old photograph from her childhood. It showed her at 8 years old, crying after a fall in the street. Beside her was a boy, helping her up, dusting off her knees. The boy's face was younger, softer, but something in his eyes was familiar. She realized with a jolt, it was Daniel. The memory hit her hard. He had once shown her kindness when she was small, and she had mocked him years later as if he were nothing. The guilt pressed down on her chest until she could barely breathe. By now, the city was divided. Some still supported the Okafors, but many believed Daniel. Protests began outside their office buildings. Workers who had lost money shouted for justice. Maya watched from a window as the crowd grew louder each day. Inside the house, silence grew heavier. Emeka still refused to admit any fault. Chaik became more reckless. Grace grew withdrawn, almost invisible. Ifeoma prayed in whispers. And Maya stood at the center of it all, realizing that the world she thought was built on strength was actually built on lies. Her loyalty to her family was breaking. She could no longer tell if protecting them was right or if it made her just as guilty. The truth was crawling out, piece by piece, and no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't stop it. The tension inside the house finally exploded one stormy night. Rain pounded the roof, and the power went out for a moment before the generator kicked in. The family sat in the living room, silent, until Emeka threw a stack of papers onto the table. "They have frozen our accounts," he said, his voice cold. "The government is moving. We may lose everything." Chaik jumped to his feet, pacing like a trapped animal. "This is your fault, Maya. If you had shut him down faster, none of this would have spread." Maya's body shook. She had stayed silent for weeks, but not anymore. "No, Chaik. This is your fault. I've seen the documents. Your initials are on half of those fake contracts. You built this mess, and you dragged all of us into it." The room went still. Grace gasped softly. Ifeoma whispered a prayer under her breath. Chaik turned on her, his eyes burning. "You dare to blame me? You, who mocked him in front of the whole city. You made him a hero." "I laughed," Maya said, her voice breaking, "but you stole. You lied. You destroyed lives." Emeka slammed his hand on the table. "Enough. We do not air our dirty laundry here. We face the enemy outside, not inside." But Maya couldn't stop now. The anger and guilt she had buried rose like fire. "Father, you knew. Don't pretend you didn't. You looked away because the money kept flowing. You let Chike do it, and now Daniel is exposing us. He's not the enemy, you are. The words hung in the air like thunder. For the first time, Emeka's mask cracked. His face twisted, and he raised his hand as if to strike her. But Ifeoma stood quickly, stepping between them. No, she said firmly, her voice steady for the first time in years. You will not hit her. You will not silence her. The truth has come. Chike sneered, pointing a finger at Maya. You think you're better than us? When this house falls, you'll fall with it. Don't think Daniel will save you. Maya stared back, tears in her eyes but strength in her voice. I don't need saving. I need freedom. And I will no longer lie for you. At that moment, the gate outside rattled. Shouts filled the air. Protesters had gathered in the rain, holding signs, chanting for justice. The family rushed to the window, but Maya stayed seated. For the first time, she did not feel fear. She felt release. The twist was clear now. The family had built their empire on lies, but the walls were crumbling. And in that collapse, Maya was no longer their shield, she was their witness. The morning after the storm, Maya woke up to a new world. News outlets announced that the government had opened a full investigation into the Okafor group. Police officers arrived at the house to deliver official notices. For the first time, the family's power could not protect them. Emeka shouted at the officers, demanding respect, but they did not bend. Chike tried to hide files, but the police collected everything. Grace cried quietly in her room. Ifeoma sat in silence, her eyes closed as though she had been expecting this day for years. Maya did not fight. She stood aside, watching, her heart heavy but steady. She felt no urge to cover for them anymore. When the officers asked for her statement, she gave it. For the first time in her life, she told the truth. The days that followed were painful. Old allies disappeared. Friends stopped calling. The Okafor name, once powerful, became a warning sign. But for Maya, something shifted. The chains that had held her to the family's lies began to break. She met with Daniel at the courthouse one afternoon. He looked tired but calm. For a moment, she expected him to spit anger at her, to remind her of her cruelty. Instead, he only said, "You see now." Her voice shook as she answered, "I do. I was blind, and I was cruel. I cannot take back what I did, but I won't lie for them anymore." Daniel studied her for a long moment before nodding. The truth is enough. He walked away without anger, leaving her with a strange kind of peace. At home, the fights grew worse. Emeka refused to admit defeat. Chike swore he would destroy Daniel. But Maya no longer joined their battles. She began spending her time outside the house, volunteering at a community center where victims of the fraud came for help. At first, people glared at her, whispered behind her back. But slowly, when they saw her hands working alongside theirs, when they saw her staying late to clean, some of the anger softened. One evening, a woman whose shop had been stolen by fake contracts hugged Maya with tears in her eyes. "You cannot give me back what I lost," she said, "but your honesty means something." For Maya, it meant everything. Her family called her a traitor. Emeka told her she was no longer his daughter. Chike spat that she had chosen strangers over blood. But Maya stood firm. For the first time, their words did not break her. She realized that family built on lies was no family at all. As the case moved forward, the Okafor's empire collapsed piece by piece. Maya walked away, carrying nothing but her name, and even that was stained. But she carried it freely, without fear, because it was finally her own. Weeks later, Maya sat on a bench outside the courthouse. The trial was still going on inside, but she had given her testimony and stepped out for air. The sky was clear, the kind of blue that felt almost new, as if the world itself was offering her a fresh start. She watched people pass by. Some glanced at her with judgment, some with pity, but a few gave small nods of respect. For the first time in her life, she did not feel the need to perform or defend herself. She simply sat, breathing freely. Her phone buzzed. It was a message from an unknown number. She opened it and saw only a few words. "The truth always wins. Be strong." She didn't know if it came from Daniel, but she smiled anyway. The words warmed her heart, reminding her of her mother's quiet voice on that dark night. She thought of her family. Emeka, still shouting inside the court. Chike, full of rage, unable to accept the fall. Grace, silent, broken by the storm. And Ifeoma, who had always known the truth but had carried it quietly in her prayers. Maya knew she had lost the world she once called home. The house, the power, the influence, they were gone. But she had gained something greater, her freedom, her voice, her conscience. As she rose from the bench, a breeze touched her face, soft and light. She closed her eyes for a moment, letting it wash over her. When she opened them, she took her first step away from the courthouse, not as the daughter of a powerful man, not as the woman who mocked the wrong man, but as someone ready to live honestly, even if the road ahead was hard. For the first time, her heart was at peace.